Bombshell, earthquake, explosion at Canarsa. What I'm about to drop on you today is so unexpected, so wild, so epic that even Nostradamus or Paul the Octopus, at their absolute best, never saw it coming. The recruitment on the horizon is so jaw-dropping that it's left half the football world stunned and Madridismo in tears on national TV. William Saliba. Yes, you heard it right. The Arsenal wall, the French central defender who turns any striker into a broken toy, is in Barca's orbit. And this isn't a joke, not cheap smoke, not a rumor from Madrid's lame press. This is a real shockwave, the kind that marks a before and after. And listen, because I'm saying this loud, clear, and without anesthesia. If you bleed Blaugrana, if you feel rage every time you see a penalty invented for Madrid, if you can't stand the daily whining of Roncero and Edu Aguirre, subscribe to this channel immediately, because here, you'll get the full Cule artillery, unfiltered. Here we live, we suffer, and we exult in blue and deep red, as it should be. Barca played this move in silence, like a sniper waiting for the perfect moment. And now, the shot has hit Madridismo right in the heart, and they've already started their usual litany. It's impossible. Barca has no money. Saliba prefers other clubs. Nonsense. They said the same about João Felix, Gundogan, Lewandowski, and all of them ended up wearing the Blaugrana jersey. This club has always had the gift of striking hard when no one expects it. And I swear on the CF, the name Saliba is a punch straight to the white narrative's face. Imagine this for a second, a roaring Camp Nou with 90,000 Cules singing at the top of their lungs, while on the pitch stands a wall formed by Ronald Araujo and William Saliba. Two titans, two mastodons, two gladiators. Gentlemen, this isn't just a defense, it's the Game of Thrones wall, painted in blue and deep red. Which striker gets past these two? None. Vinicius will want to dance, but he'll end up crashing into a wall. Bellingham will want to shine like a superstar, but he'll find himself facing two freight trains that will destroy him. Haaland will want to play cyborg, but here, he'll turn into an AliExpress android. Mbappe will try a long run, but Saliba Lovaxo will time him like he's running the Paris Marathon. Zero options. And let me tell you more, Madridismo knows it. They feel it in the air, in their guts, in their meetings at Asador Donosierra. That's why they're desperate, pushing their usual narrative. Roncero is already preparing his tearful editorials with that eternal indignant tone, saying it's unacceptable, that there's something fishy, that the league is rigged. Edu Aguirre scratches his beard, staring at the horizon like a kid who just had his ball taken away in the schoolyard. Pedrerol chokes on his words, unable to string together a coherent sentence when he has to explain how Barca can recruit a world-class centre-back while Florentino keeps signing random Brazilians who end up lost in Castilla. You can't ignore the irony. Madrid has boasted for years about its prestige and Galactico narrative, yet its defense crumbles every time a team plays seriously against them. Militao looked good until he got injured. Nacho is only useful for being the nice guy in locker room chats, because as a centre-back, he inspires pity and fear. Rudiger impresses with his villain face, but as soon as someone gets past him on the flank, he opens up highways like a road worker. And now, just when they seem to have a little stability, bam! Saliba appears and strikes fear into their hearts. And what does Saliba represent? Youth with character, titanic physical condition, supersonic speed, and, above all, mastery of the ball. Because here, we don't want blind patapums or clearances that end up at the opponent's feet. Here, we want to defend the Cule way, with intelligence, composure, and class. And Saliba has all of that. I'm not exaggerating when I say this guy is the perfect mix of Puyol's power, Marquez's technical quality, and the cool-headedness of a modern centre-back like Gerard Pique. That's the level we're talking about. Meanwhile, Florentino continues in his parallel world, presenting unknown 17-year-olds as if they're the next Pelé. Endrick Wonderboy, he'll be our future. Yes, a future in 5 years, and paying €60 million like it's peanuts. In contrast, Barca is targeting Saliba, an already established player with a brilliant present and an even more monstrous future. That's the difference between a club that lives on marketing and a club that lives on sentiment, soul, and footballing greatness. Cules, we feel it in our blood. If this recruitment happens, the excitement it will generate will be historic. The new Camp Nou, the rising pearl, will welcome a French warrior like it welcomed Henry, Vidal, or a Pique TT. France knows what defenders are, and Barça will take advantage of that tradition to create a wall alongside Araujo that will be memorable for decades. And I'm not exaggerating, because with Saliba and Araujo, guys, we have the best centre-back duo on the planet. Not Marquinhos with whoever you want, not Van Dijk, not Militao with whoever you invent, nothing comes close. And watch out, because this recruitment isn't just about sports, it's moral, psychological, sending a message to all of Europe. Barça is back, Barça isn't dead, Barça is strong, Barça dreams big. Let's see who's brave enough to step into the Spotify camp, new thinking they can score a goal with these two beasts guarding the house. The easy days are over. The free gifts are over. The doubts are over. With Saliba, this Barça is arming itself to the teeth to return to the top, and I can already see it coming. Every match will be a nightmare for rivals and a party for us. Saliba cutting through balls like hot bread, Araujo clearing like an iron wall, and the Cules celebrating every interception like a goal. Meanwhile, in Madrid, Vinicius will search for spaces that don't exist, desperate, throwing himself into the box to see if the referee gives him something. Bellingham will lower his head, frustrated because he can't invent penalties anymore. Rodrigo will run in circles like a headless chicken, and on social media, Cules will unleash golden memes. Saliba in a yellow safety vest closing the Madridista highway, Vinicius trying to dance and crashing into a wall, Roncero searching for Kleenex on Amazon Prime. And you might ask me, what happens if Barça actually recruits him? Well, the white narrative, that 10 years of Madridista domination with Bellingham, Vinicius, and Mbappe, collapses in 2 seconds. Because having Saliba means having stability, foundations. Football doesn't start up front, it starts at the back. The biggest titles are won by the team that defends the best, and with this move, Barça would flip the script. They should be the ones worried. They would become the victims of the new Blaugrana wall. And that's where the real feast begins. What makes this recruitment, beyond the sporting aspect, a direct psychological attack on the heart of the Meseta? Because Saliba isn't just a world-class centre-back, he's a collective trauma for Madridismo.
Why?
Because his presence represents exactly what they've been trying to recruit for years but never managed to get. Madrid has spent recklessly on mediocre defenders. Whether it's Militao, who seemed like the new Thiago Silva but ended up looking like the new Pepe Reina, without the charm, or Rudiger, who was a wall at Chelsea but at Madrid resembles a training cone. Or the eternal substitute, Willian José, who only serves to give interviews boasting about his humility but never took the step to recruit a young centre-back with an elite present and future. Barça, on the other hand, is doing it. And that hurts. It hurts because it exposes them, because it proves that the club they insist is dead, broken, and without a future is the one that truly anticipates the market and secures a centre-back who can define an era. I can already picture the campaign in the tertulias. Roncero, his face fallen apart, saying, "It's not possible. Florentino won't allow it. The Liga must intervene." Yes, Tomas, just like the Liga intervened when you were gifted penalties for coughing in the box. Pedrerol screaming, "Exclusive." Saliba doesn't want to come to Barça, he prefers Manchester City. And then, 2 hours later, an English source demolishes the smokescreen and confirms that Barça is negotiating directly with Arsenal. And Edu Aguirre, Florentino's eternal media bodyguard, crying live, "Barça can't register him, you know that." The same thing he said about Gundogan, about Cancelo, the same thing he said every summer until he saw Barça unveil signings at Camp Nou. Edu, learn once and for all, this club is pure essence, it always comes back. Saliba at Barça would be like a reality punch that shatters the white illusion of superiority. They think they're invincible because they have Vinicius dancing, because they buy headlines, because they rely on the referee to blow the opportunistic whistle. But what happens when you take away their defensive highway and put two beasts like Saliba and Araujo in front of them? The party's over. They dismantle the narrative, and Barça, with this defense, is ready to reclaim its dominance. And that's where it hurts to see the Madridistas manipulated. It hurts more than any last-minute goal, because Madridismo feeds on illusions, on the fairy tale with which they believe they're superior. When you snatch that away in one blow, they collapse, they break, they cry, and we revel in it. But let's set aside the white tears for a moment and focus on the Cule treat, what this means for us, imaginatively. Because this recruitment isn't just anything, it's history being written before it even happens. A Saliba-Araujo duo isn't just a defense, it's an identity, a character, a message to the world. Barça doesn't sell out, doesn't surrender, and certainly doesn't kneel. Seeing them together on the pitch is like revisiting Puyol with Marquez, Koeman with Nadal, legendary centre-backs who didn't just defend but inspired. And believe me, inspiring at a time when everyone had written us off is the secret weapon. The dressing room would thank him immediately, because they're tired of always burdening Araujo with the responsibility of facing Vinicius over and over as if it were a personal duel, while the other centre-backs look the other way. With Saliba, Ronald is no longer alone. With Saliba, Vinicius can't look for the other side to escape, because he finds another monster there. With Saliba, every attempt at football blackmail vanishes. Barça regains its balance at the back. The team breathes easier. The midfielders play with confidence. The wingers attack without fear of leaving space, because they know that behind them, the wall is solid. And that family is the foundation of everything. Champions Leagues aren't won with strikers improvising like they're in the schoolyard. They're won with solid, organized blocks that don't give a second's rest. And that's where the epic begins to beat again, because with Saliba, Barça sends a warning to all of Europe, not just to Madrid, not just to La Liga, but to Manchester City, Bayern, PSG, to everyone. We've put the padlock back on the house. Now dare to come. Imagine a Champions League with Saliba cutting off Mbappe's runs, Araujo neutralizing Haaland, just like he's already done. Against whoever you want, they'll be there at the back, stopping one or two balls the entire match. That's rebuilding the mystique. That's restoring faith. That's returning to the top. And the funniest detail? Saliba is French, and France, as you know, is a battleground between Barça and Madrid. While they scramble to recruit Mbappe, we, with a sly smile, secure the centre-back they actually need. They can put Kylian up front, but what happens when he runs into a compatriot who knows him inside out and doesn't let him breathe? Exactly, a national trauma in France and an eternal party in Barcelona. And this twist of fate is what leaves all of Madridismo speechless. Well, without Saliba too. And of course, when we talk about the possible recruitment of Saliba to Barça, we can't avoid discussing the real panic spreading through the White offices. Because Florentino isn't stupid. He knows that if Barça gets its hands on a centre-back of this level, La Liga stops being a Sunday stroll for Madrid and becomes a weekly hell. The reality is that Florentino struggles to maintain the narrative that Madrid dominates, but deep down, he's already biting his nails. Picture the scene, Florentino in his office, staring at Mbappe's photo like it's a saint, and suddenly, he receives the report that Barça is negotiating for Saliba. His cigar drops, his glass of Vega Sicilia spills, and he starts hearing that echo he hates so much, Laporta got him again. Because yes, Florentino can brag about his Super League and his non-existent Galactico signings, but when Barça acts, it always hurts. So, Kuhl brothers, I'll say it to you clearly and openly. If you love Barça, if you bleed Blaugrana, if you hate seeing Madrid gifted penalties every week and the media cave manipulating narratives, subscribe now. Because here, we're going to dissect all of this with irony, with truth, with a passion that only a true Kuhl can have. We're going to live through the ultimate drama, the Madridista tears, the white collapse, and the Kuhl resurrection. And this pain multiplies in the cave, because for them, this recruitment would be a humiliation. They spend their time saying Barça can't register players, can't recruit, that we're a walking corpse. Imagine them on the day Saliba's arrival in Barcelona is announced. The tertulias would explode, El Chiringuito would go up in flames, Roncero with a funeral face, Edu Aguirre speechless, and Pedrerol with his classic, "It's not possible, it's not possible." And meanwhile, on set, an awkward silence, long faces, it would be the most delicious spectacle for any Kuhl. That's why I say Saliba isn't just a sporting recruitment. He's a weapon of mass destruction against the white narrative. It's ripping open their seams and showing their fragility. And what would they do then? What they always do, make up excuses. Arsenal gave him to them, they'll say, just like they said Bayern gave us Lewandowski or Manchester City gave us Cancelo. Always excuses. But the reality is simple. Barça is a magnet for greatness despite all the difficulties. Players know that wearing the Blaugrana jersey is more than football. It's belonging to a history, a global passion, a unique DNA. And Saliba, who knows this, will want to be part of this legend. They can keep saying whatever they want, but when they see William posing at Camp Nou, their narrative will shatter like glass. And now that I think about it, let's go further. Let's imagine concrete, on-field scenarios. A Clásico at the Bernabeu. 85,000 Madridistas waiting to see Vinicius pull off his cheap bicycle kick tricks. 12th minute. Vini starts, thinks he's one-on-one with Count, lifts his head, smirks, and suddenly, he runs into Araujo and Saliba closing in like two hungry wolves. Instant interception, ball recovered, cool counterattack. The camera pans to Ancelotti, who does that eyebrow raise like he's wondering what time he agreed to coach Florentino's luxury Castilla. And in the stands, an awkward silence. That silence we love so much, because it means fear has set in. Imagine Bellingham, who's been surviving for months on ghost penalties, facing Saliba. He tries a dribble, bounces off, rebounds like a marble against a wall. He looks for a foul, glances at the referee, but it turns out the little white envelope didn't make it to the referee's locker room that day. So he raises his arms, frustrated, because he realizes it's not as easy as they made him believe. That's what Saliba brings, the ability to turn the so-called white hero into a mere human who suffers. And every time that happens, cool morale will skyrocket. And what about Rodrigo, who always tries to be the Clásico protagonist? With Saliba, there's no more room for his directionless runs. The Brazilian will find himself facing a center-back who reads his intentions before he even starts, who senses the game before he even thinks it, and when he tries to shoot, Saliba's foot will appear like an inevitable shadow. With this center-back, Barça doesn't just gain a defender, it gains a game reader, a psychologist on the pitch, someone who disarms the opponent at the root. That's pure dynamite. That's what makes a club grow into a title contender again. But it's not just about destroying Madrid, though, let's admit it, that already brings us a lot of joy. It's also about the impact on all of Europe, because at the end of the day, what we all want is to see Barça dominate again in the Champions League, where the real giants are measured. And there, with Saliba, Barça doesn't go in as a victim, but as the executioner. Let them come, Haaland, Mbappe, Kane. With this defense, the fear changes sides. The fear is no longer in Barcelona, the fear moves to the opposition, and that sensation of global respect, the one stolen from us for years, returns. And if we talk about the media environment, Saliba's arrival would have a magnitude 9 earthquake impact in the cave. Because think about how it would affect the late-night TV circus. El Chiringuito would turn into a live funeral. I can already picture the scene, Pedrerol with his fake smile, trying to keep his cool, saying, calm down, Madrid has its centre-backs." Meanwhile, a giant banner appears, bombshell, Saliba to Barça, the air cuts out. Roncero stands up, spins like a broken top, slams the table, and screams, "It's unfair, Barça can't recruit." And in a corner, Edu Aguirre stares into the void, repeating to himself that it's not possible, like a short-circuiting robot. And why so much hysteria? Because they know that with Saliba, the narrative crumbles. They know Barça is reclaiming a symbol of power, and that's what hurts them the most. Madrid survives on fictions. We're the best, we have total control, Barça is dead. But if Barça recruits a centre-back who's in the world's top 3, all those fictions shatter. They can't go on TV anymore and say Vinicius is unstoppable, because suddenly, he'll be stopped twice a game. They can't say Bellingham is the new Zidane, because he won't even be able to turn with the ball. And they can't fool their fans with smokescreen recruitment promises anymore, because here, Barça shows them that real action is possible, that supreme quality can be recruited. And now, I ask you, Kuhl family, do you realize what Saliba would represent in the Champions League? Because we talk a lot about La Liga and making Madridismo cry, but the eternal goal is to lift the Orejona again. And that's where Saliba becomes the differential factor. Because let's be clear, 4 years, we've been missing that centre-back to take us to absolute elite status. We were a team with quality, youth, magic up front, but with doubts at the back. The story repeated itself. In every big elimination, we conceded a stupid goal, a mistake on the break, a disconnection, and goodbye. But with Saliba, all that changes. With Saliba, we have that centre-back who knows that Champions Leagues aren't won by playing pretty for 90 minutes, but by knowing how to suffer at the back, by closing spaces, by making the opponent desperate. That's how you build a team that becomes a contender for everything again. Let's set the scene. Barça versus Manchester City in the Champions League quarterfinals. Guardiola arrives with his army of programmed robots. Haaland, the cyborg who crushes defenses, rubs his hands together because he thinks he has free rein. First long ball, the Norwegian sprints forward, and slams into Saliba, solid, lightning fast, composed under pressure. The giant monster of Manchester is left disoriented because, for the first time, he realizes he doesn't have the physical advantage. Stunned silence in the stands, and the commentary booms, "What a defensive masterclass from Saliba!" That moment would mark the beginning of a European renaissance for Barça. Another example, a semi-final against PSG. High-stakes match. Mbappé is on fire down the flank, thinking he'll destroy everything as usual. Saliba shadows him, intimidates him, battles him physically, and the French superstar realizes he's up against a compatriot who knows him inside out. No fouls, no reckless tackles, just Barca-style defending, clean but brutally effective. Result, Mbappé disappears. And on the other side of the continent, Madridismo watches the game with tears in their eyes, whispering to themselves, "That was the centre-back we needed. Why Laporta and not Florentino?" That, brothers, is poetic justice. With Saliba, Barca commands respect in Europe again. We become contenders again. We intimidate again. And the best part? Q'll start watching the Champions League draw with excitement, not fear, because we know that with this steel wall behind us, anything is possible. And that, priceless. Saliba's recruitment isn't smoke, a joke, or a fantasy. It's a real possibility that proves Barca always comes back, always reappears when everyone thought we were finished. And for Madridismo, only two options remain: cry louder or accept their fate. Because if this recruitment happens, not even their bar tricks, penalties, or last-minute help will stop us. And I ask you, Q'll family, do you think that with Saliba, Barca will have the best defense in the world? Can you imagine Camp Nou erupting when the anthem plays again with this titan in the lineup? Do you think Vinicius will survive psychologically when facing Araujo and Saliba at the same time? That Bellingham will keep smiling when he sees the white empire crumble against a Blaugrana wall? Barca is alive. Barca is breathing. Barca is dreaming. And this time, with Saliba, the message is clear. We're back to rule, we're back to silence the doubters, we're back to drown Madridismo in its own tears. I'll leave it there for today, Q'ls. From the bottom of my heart, if you love Barca, subscribe, share, and comment if you think Saliba will be the signing that brings us back to the throne of world football. Because this isn't just a rumor, it's a thunderclap.